Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always, told out of Voice Radio. So today, with the World Championships just days away, 2019 World Championships anyway, I thought we should finally have a look back at the first ever Pokemon World Championship winning deck. I am, of course, talking about the Magma Spirit deck, with which Sugiyoshi Yamato won the 2004 Pokemon World Championships. First ever winning deck, first ever printed winning deck, first proper World Championships. When Wizards of the Coast operated the game pre-2004, there were a couple of others, but they don't really count. We can argue about that another day. Point is, this was a weird deck. Now, this is 2004, right? This is when the internet was not what the internet is now. And what happens is a bunch of Japanese players came over to the World Championships with these Team Magma decks, and the American players were not ready. It doesn't happen so much anymore. It's hard to get surprises, but this was a big surprise at the time. So it's all based around Team Magma's Pokemon. One of the main ones, certainly the one that made the cover of the deck when it was printed, so to speak, Team Magma's Groudon. Now, Team Magma's Groudon's a little bit awkward. It's got a Pokebody that says, as long as the number of Pokemon in play, yours and your opponent's, that has Team Magma in its name is 3 or less, you can't attack. Groudon can't attack. But the good news is that it is both fighting and darkness types. You're hitting 2 weaknesses. It then, for 1 fighting, 1 colorless energy, does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. And for 2 fighting, 1 colorless energy does 50 damage. But if the defending Pokemon has at least 2 damage counters on it, you do 70 damage. Obviously, that's where the first attack comes in. And I know 70 for free energy doesn't sound like a lot, but you got to remember, this is back in 2004. When Team Magma's Groudon has 100 HP, you know that doing 70 is pretty good. And the thing was that back in 2004, the game was a little bit slower. Decks took a little bit longer to set up. You didn't have turn 1 explosions like you do nowadays. So it really wasn't that slow as it goes. Now, the other main attacker here we had was Team Magma's Zangoose. I know you don't usually see Zangoose coming around at the center of decks, but this one was good. For 1 colorless energy, you could search for a basic colorless Pokemon, or basic Pokemon with Team Magma in its name, as in all of yours, put it onto your bench. Or for 3 colorless energy, 10 damage times the number of Pokemon in play with Team Magma in its name. So you're basically doing 60 just for your own Pokemon here. And then if your opponent plays any as well, you can do even more. That sounds pretty gosh darn good. Now, the energy here, it's low compared to a lot of decks, but still wasn't all that low. But then we had options. Team Magma's Camerupt. Once during your turn, you may search your discard pile for a basic energy card and attach it to Team Magma's Camerupt. Put 2 damage counters on Team Magma's Camerupt. Cannot be used if you're affected by a special condition. And okay, that gets the energy on Camerupt, and for fire double colors, you can do 50 damage and then move a fire energy to one of your bench. It's fine. But that's where Team Magma's Claydol comes in. Team Magma's Claydol is another one of these dual-type Pokemon. It is Psychic and Darkness. And it's got the ability Magma Switch. Once during your turn, you may move an energy card attached to your Pokemon with Team Magma in its name to another of your Pokemon. Can't be used if affected by a special condition. So you get the energy onto Camerupt, and then move it using Claydol. It is the 2004 equivalent of using Naganadel to get the energy, and then using something like Quagsire or Weavile to move it to one of your other Pokemon. And this was how you got your energy rolling, how you kept it going. Now, they're both stage 1 Pokemon, so you've got to take a turn to get them going, but remember what I said. The format back then, little bit slower. Took a little bit longer to get up and rolling. So you really weren't punished as much for taking that turn to evolve up Claydol and evolve up Camerupt. And then when they're going, you can get 2 free energy onto your active a turn. one from your hand and then one for each combination of Camerupt and Claydol, and you're looking pretty good. Or maybe you want to swap an old Groudon for a new Groudon. Well, that's alright, because you can roll and just use Claydol to move from your old Groudon to your new Groudon. The other thing to point out here is Claydol is hitting Psychic and Darkness type weakness. I should say the attack Psychic double colorless 40. If you've got more cards in hand than your opponent, you do 60. And then you've got Groudon, who's hitting for Fighting and Darkness typing. And then you've got Camerupt, who's hitting for your Fire weakness. And all of a sudden, that's 4 different weaknesses you're hitting in the same deck. This is giving you some pretty good options. And that's the Pokemon line. It was a little bit thinner as a Pokemon line than we saw in a lot of decks back then. I mean, this played 15 Pokemon. The second place deck, Chris Phillips' Blaziken deck, played 23. Which means you've now got more options for trainer cards that you can use to try and hurt your opponent. Now, before we get there, a quick word about energy. We got mostly fighting energy here for your Groudon. There is a psychic energy here so that you can attack with your Claydol, and a couple of rainbow energy because you've got different types of Pokemon. You've got different energy requirements. You have to take the damage counter that nobody really wants to take, but it's better than not being able to attack. So even though we got to take the damage counter for Rainbow Energy, we still accept it. But we also have Team Magma Energy, although it was actually just called Magma Energy back then. And Magma Energy provided 2 energy, although it only provided Fighting and Darkness. It can only be attached to a Pokemon with Team Magma in its name. It provides Fire and Darkness energy, 2 at a time, doesn't count as a basic energy card when not in play, no effect other than providing energy. Obviously, for someone like Groudon, that's absolutely perfect. Because now, Groudon's first attack is actually a single energy attachment. Obviously, you play 4 of these. Its second attack, one of these, plus a Camerupt and a Claydol, and you're already going. In a format where these big bad Pokemon don't have huge HP. I mean, look, I told you the second place deck was Blaziken EX. And okay, had 150 HP, but it was also a stage 2 that gave up 2 prizes. So it's the kind of thing that would have 250 HP nowadays. And all of a sudden, you're essentially hitting 70 damage in an attack that can get rolling in a single turn. You are just more efficient and faster and frankly better than the alternatives. I haven't mentioned it in this video yet, but Yamato actually went undefeated through the entire World Championships with this deck. He went through, didn't lose a single game. So what about the trainer line here? Well, we got 4 copies of Team Magma Conspirator. Yeah, you had some of your own trainer cards here as well. And it was a supporter card that read, search your deck for up to 2 in any combination of basic Pokemon with Team Magma in its name and basic energy, put them into your hand. So you can grab your Team Magma's Pokemon, or you can grab your basic energy, including that 1 psychic energy you play for your Claydol. That's going to help you get set up. But the other card we had, and it really was for Magma Pokemon, was Maxi. Maxi, search your hand or discard pile for a Pokemon with Team Magma in its name, put it onto your bench. Treat the new bench Pokemon as a basic Pokemon. If it's a stage 2, put 2 damage counters on it. So you know how I was saying how your Camerupt and Claydol are stage 1 Pokemon? Maxi allows you to play them straight away as if they were basic Pokemon, either from your hand or your discard pile. It's very reminiscent of Maxi's Hidden Ball trick, except arguably even better because you can play from your hand rather than just your discard pile, though Maxi's Hidden Ball trick doesn't make you put 2 damage counters on a stage 2. This gives you extra speed and works beautifully. I've shown you there's a couple of important stage 1s here. Yeah, this one helps you get them rolling. We've then got Steven's Advice, well, it's just a widely played supporter card at the time to help you get rolling. You draw a number of cards up to the number of your opponent's Pokemon in play, just so long as you don't have more than 7 cards in your hand. Decent draw power helps you draw a bunch of cards. Similarly, we've got TV Reporter, draw 3 cards, discard any card from your hand. And okay, it's not always getting you as many as Steven's advice, but it's just a flat draw 3 rather than being dependent on other things like your other draw cards generally are. And you need to discard for Camerupt, and you need to discard for Maxi, so the discarding's not too bad. 3 copies of Underground Expedition. Underground Expedition, look at the bottom 4 cards of your deck, put 2 into your hand, put the remaining ones on the bottom of your deck in any order. Just really nice for helping to find what you need, getting yourself set up here. Couple copies of Copycat. Now, this is legal at the moment, so this should be a bit familiar. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw a number of cards equal to your opponent's hand size. Can be, unfortunately, hindered if your opponent has a small hand. 1 copy of Switch. It's Switch. Switch has been legal forever. It gets your Pokemon out the active. I'm assuming at this stage you all probably are at least vaguely familiar with Switch. Now, there was one other Team Magma specific card here, and it was Team Magma Ball. And what you do is you flip a coin, and you got to flip a heads, but if you flip a heads, search your deck for a Pokemon with Team Magma in it, show it to your opponent, put it into your hand. But if tails, you search your deck for a basic Pokemon with Team Magma in its name and put it into your hand. Okay, if you really want to get your Claydol or your Camerupt, you've got to hit a heads, but they're the only 2 non-basics you have. So most of the time, it's not going to matter too much. Also, this great combo with Maxi, grab your Camerupt or Claydol and put them straight down using Maxi. Now, there were a couple of other cards here, and they were annoying cards. And they were annoying cards that you basically had room to play because you played such a small Pokemon line. So there were a couple copies of Mr. Briny's Compassion. As a side note, some of the loveliest art we've ever seen on a Pokemon card. Choose one of your Pokemon in play, return that Pokemon and all cards attached to it to your hand. Now, bearing in mind, Team Magma's Groudon is a basic Pokemon with 100 HP, which, well, I told you that Blaziken was a stage 2 that gave up 2 prizes that had 150 HP. A basic giving up 1 prize that has 100 is nuts, and this actually allowed you to return it and all cards attached to it to your hand, meaning that taking 6 prizes becomes even more difficult. We then have 3 copies of Pokemon Reversal. We've seen Pokemon Reversal as recently as the Heart Gold Soul Silver era, but also it's just Pokemon Catcher. You flip a coin, if heads, you grab one of your opponent's Pokemon from the bench and drag it into the active, meaning that you can take out bench Pokemon. But bearing in mind, I've already told you that this deck is faster than a lot of the competition, so being faster and having space for these cards means you can wreck a bunch of setups before they even get going. And then 3 copies of Desert Ruins, the 1 stadium card that makes its way into the deck. At any time between turns, each player puts 1 damage counter on his or her Pokemon EX with a maximum HP of at least 100. Oh look, you're not playing any Pokemon EX, which means that against these Pokemon that are, and there were a bunch of EX Pokemon, you're just dropping extra damage, just in case you weren't doing well enough. And remember, Team Magma's Groudon's second attack kind of relies on having 2 damage counters on the defending Pokemon. That's how you hit for 70 rather than 50. This was a very powerful deck, a very fast deck, a very consistent deck, and a deck with more space for techs than a lot of the ones around at the time. It was the first time we really had a proper World Championships, and probably not coincidentally, the first time that someone turned up, and by someone I mean a lot of Japanese players, with a deck that the rest of the world just did not see coming and rolled. Wouldn't be the last time. I'm looking at you, Mega Ordino. But I will tell you that this was a very weird deck to players outside of Japan, and a deck which absolutely crushed. Hence why Yamato went 7-0 and won the World Championships. Now, I have done videos about most, not all, but most of the World Championship winning decks. I will link them all in the description, as well as making a lovely little playlist. So do make sure you check out some previous year's winners as we get ready and rolling with the 2019 World Championships. Tell me what you think's going to win this year. Tell me what you think about Magma Spirit. Go nuts in the comment section. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WasiPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.